Coming up in this episode, we take a good look at the VFR rules and staying within the law, and I show you a classic accident scenario I got myself into by trying to fly VFR when it just wasn't possible. Welcome to Short Field, a channel all about the lighter side of aviation. And today we're taking a good look at flying under VFR rules above the clouds for the VFR only pilot and asking, is it legal, is it safe, and should you even do it? Hopefully we'll answer all those questions in this video, so buckle up because here we go. Hi guys, although I usually place a disclaimer regarding me not being an instructor and about the video being for entertainment only at the end of my videos, due to the subject matter in this one, I want to emphasise that point. Whatever information you glean from this video, please remember is only based on my personal experience as a private pilot in the UK and of my understanding of the rules and the law. For your safety and legality, consult an instructor before attempting any of the following. And for your information, I hold a UK issued PPL with an IRR rating, but the little Pipersport I currently fly is only certified for daytime VFR flight. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's get on with the video. We all know what hard IMC weather looks like, and VFR only pilots should never be anywhere near it and should never ever fly in cloud. But there are a lot of conditions that a non-instrument pilot can fly in legally and safely without reference to the ground and even above cloud. Today we're going to look at some of those situations and why you may want to do this. Before I started flying my current VFR only aircraft, I was very used to flying IFR in IMC. I was based at a large airport with ILS on both runways, a full radar service and a very capable IFR certified aircraft. So when moving over to the Pipersport and rebasing to a VFR only airfield, I had to adjust the way I flew. Although the option to fly in IMC was no longer available to me, I wanted to maximise my flying opportunities, which meant going over the VFR rules again in detail so that I could eke out every chance to get airborne. As part of that process, the option of flying above cloud or VFR on top seemed a good way of keeping above the worst of the weather whenever possible. So I decided to make this video to show you the different situations where I found this possible, as well as trying to give some actual examples of doing it. Let's start by having a quick overview of the current visual flight rules as defined by the Standardised European Rules of the Air, or SERA, which is based on the ICAO specification and which the UK's Air Navigation Order is aligned. Each state can make minor adjustments to these rules through amendments. The visual flight rules are a set of rules where the pilot of an aircraft is able at all times to maintain separation from other aircraft and from terrain and obstacles by sole reference to features outside of the cockpit, which means VFR flight is only really possible when separation from cloud and the visibility meets a certain defined minima. To complicate things, these rules change according to your height and or the class of airspace you are flying in and the speed that you're flying at. Today we're only looking at flight in the UK, FIR, in a fixed wing aircraft, during the day, below 10,000 feet and in class F and G airspace and at speeds below 140 knots. Visual meteorological conditions, or VMC, is the minimal weather conditions set out to ensure VFR flight rules can be maintained. These are currently below 3,000 feet above mean sea level or 1,000 feet above the terrain, whichever is the higher, you must have an in-flight forward visibility of 1,500 meters or more. You need to be clear of cloud and you must be in sight of the surface. There's no vertical cloud clearance requirement, although maintaining a separation from the clouds of at least 200 feet is advisable. Now that's all pretty straightforward, but it's worth exploring that 1,500 meters in-flight visibility minimum. If you've ever flown on a low visibility day, you'll know how disorientating this can be when just looking out the window. With little or no horizon, difficult to see ground references, as well as being almost impossible to see other aircraft, all while covering that 1,500 metre minimum visibility requirement in under 30 seconds at 100 knots, you can soon see why this is not a wise situation to put yourself in as a visual only pilot. If you decide to climb above 3,000 feet into clearer air, the VMC minima then changes and your in-flight forward visibility must now be at least 5 kilometers and you need to be clear of cloud horizontally by 1,500 meters. Additionally, instead of being just clear of cloud, you are now required to ensure you have a vertical separation from cloud of at least 1,000 feet. However, you are no longer required to be in sight of the surface. This opens up options for the visual pilot as the 1,000 foot clearer cloud vertical requirement does not stipulate if that 1,000 feet cloud separation is above or below you. Now before we go any further, I need to warn you that I'm definitely not recommending any of the following, which could lead you to break the law at best and be extremely dangerous, if not life-threatening at worst. But done correctly, with a good understanding of the rules, the current and future weather conditions, terrain and airspace around you, climbing above the cloud can be a legal and safe option for a VFR only pilot to take, and in certain situations it might be the best thing to do. Let's take a look at some scenarios where flying VFR above the clouds is allowed, and if not, what you should do to stay legal and safe. Scenario 1. Fog. It's a lovely day and you're flying along in gin clear skies at 2,500 feet in uncontrolled airspace. You need to cross a body of water to get to your destination, which you know is also in perfect VMC conditions. But the water has a shallow fog layer over it, which is obscuring the surface. If you carry on at 2,500 feet and fly over the fog, you will no longer be in sight of the surface and will no longer be VFR, even though the visibility at your level is perfectly clear. In this situation, to stay legal, you would need to climb to 3,000 feet or above to continue under VFR flight rules until the surface becomes visible once more. Scenario number 2. Climbing above poor visibility. There's a large temperature inversion at 2,000 feet and you are flying along in uncontrolled airspace at 1,500 feet with poor forward visibility. There's some small puffy clouds just above you marking the top of the inversion, but there's at least 1,500 meters between them. If the airspace allows and the current weather situation is unlikely to change in the short term, it may be safer to find a gap between the clouds to climb through and to continue up to 3,000 feet or above to stay on top of the inversion and at least 1,000 feet above the clouds and in clear air where visibility will be superior. It is very important to ensure that your destination remains in VMC conditions and that the cloud coverage will allow you to drop back down again through them legally when required. Scenario 3. Thermic conditions. It's summer and you're enjoying fine flying weather, except at low level the air is very thermic and you're being bumped around, making the flight uncomfortable. There's well scattered fair weather cumulus above you at 1,800 feet. And if the airspace and terrain allow, it would make sense to climb up above the cloud to smoother air. Ensure you can keep the required 1,500 meter distance from any cloud and make a note of the altitude of the cloud tops as you pass them while climbing above them. You should climb to a height that allows a good view of the ground below the clouds. But if you need to climb above 3,000 feet, then you should refer back to the cloud top height and add 1,000 feet to that. For example, if the cloud tops are at 2,500 feet above the surface and you can't get a good view of the ground, you must climb to 3,500 feet where you no longer be required to have sight of the surface. If you do this, you must make sure that the conditions allow for you to descend back down below the clouds safely and legally. Scenario 4. Flying over unbroken cloud. You're on a long cross-country flight with lots of uncontrolled airspace above you. Your planned route crosses a number of military airfields mats, but you want to take a direct routing and plan on cruising at a high enough altitude to fly over them all. There's a large area of unbroken cloud with a base at 1,900 feet, rising to tops at 3,200 feet forecast along your route. Your departure airfield was clear and your arrival airfield is forecast as good VMC conditions up to 5,000 feet at your estimated arrival time. To overfly the en route match, you will need to be at a height above 3,000 feet from the airdrome surface level, and with the cloud tops forecast to be around 3,200 feet, you will need to be at a minimal cruising height of 4,200 feet or 1,000 feet above the cloud tops if they're not as forecast. You need to monitor the weather situation continually, especially at your destination, to ensure you can descend whilst maintaining visual flight rules. You should also make sure you have an alternative that is in good VMC conditions. Let's take a look at some examples of VFR flight in VMC above cloud. This is a very safe way of flying VFR on top. In this situation, we've got scattered cumulus below us, plenty of space to the left to descend. I've got 1,000 feet above the cloud and good visibility. This was a day very similar to scenario number 4, where we took off in very clear air. In fact, there was not a cloud in the sky. Big bank of cloud along the south coast of the UK, which we managed to climb above. We're above 3,000 feet, so we don't need to be inside the surface, and we landed back in VMC to a very clear Oaksey Park. This is a similar situation to the last example, except we're a bit lower now. We're 3,500 feet over unbroken cloud. The cloud tops are only 2,500 feet, and just ahead of the aircraft you can see that it's actually starting to break up a little bit, and in fact it became clear after about another 7 or 8 miles. In this example we're below 3,000 feet, so we need to be able to see the surface, which we can do. The cloud's pretty broken, but not quite broken enough for us to descend through it yet. But we have good visibility of the ground. We have no cloud around us horizontally, so we just waited for a gap, a big enough gap where we could descend down legally, which happened just a few miles on from here. I've included this clip as an example of when VMC becomes IMC. If you get to this stage as I did and the forward visibility drops below 1,500 meters, you need to get out of that situation immediately. This flight could have easily become an accident report, with reducing vis, descending to keep in sight of the surface, and heading into an area of high ground had all the hallmarks of an accident waiting to happen. The deteriorating weather situation meant that I was transiting from visual conditions into IMC, and in a VFR only aircraft I could not press on and had no choice but to do a 180 and return to the VMC conditions that I'd left behind me. On turning back and returning to visual conditions, I then climbed to 4,400 feet and continued on top of the weather, which was a fairly local event. I'd already tuned into the ATIS at a larger airfield en route, which was giving clear conditions, so I knew I could descend in VMC, but I should never have pressed on this far into the worsening weather. This was a lesson learned, and now a lesson I've shared with you today. So in summary, while choosing to fly above cloud as a VFR only pilot is always a major decision and one that should never be taken lightly, it can be not only totally legal, but in certain situations a safer bet. Just remember, as the old adage says, what goes up must come down. So the minute you are above it all, you need to be thinking about when and where you will descend back under it again. VMC minima and VFR rules are there for a reason, so never ignore them or push the limits, as it may be more than your license you'll lose. You need to remember that you need to be in sight of the surface at all times when below 3,000 feet, and it's only when you are above this you can fly over unbroken cloud. And even then you need to be well clear of it. Scud running on top is not an option. You also need to be aware of aircraft flying under IFR flight rules climbing or descending through the cloud layer. Using the Take 2 initiative used for controlled airspace avoidance is a good option, where you always stay a minimum of 200 feet vertically from the cloud layer. Knowing what weather and cloud conditions will be safe to climb above and what won't come with experience and study. So if you want to know more about the weather, why not book onto a specialist weather course? I'll leave a link to one I recommend below. Or better still, go and get your IRR rating and learn how to fly on instruments in IMC. So that does it for this episode. This is a controversial subject and I'm sure you will have your views. Please pop your comments, positive or negative, in the section below. I'd love to hear about your thoughts, experiences or recommendations, and I read every comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I've really enjoyed making this video. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so I can let you know next time I upload a video. Hopefully you found this video helpful, but please note I'm not an instructor. This is all based on my personal experience as a private pilot in the UK. Please check all the latest rules and requirements, as things may have changed since this video was recorded. Other countries and regions may have different rules or requirements, so ensure you check your local ones. Fly safe guys, and Short Field out.